I judge you unfortunate because you have never been unfortunate. You have passed through life without an antagonist. No one will know what you can do, not even yourself. Seneca. Hello, Full Metal family, and welcome back to another episode of the Full Metal Cast. I am your host, Morris Walker, and as always, thank you for spending your valuable time consuming the content that I create. I also want to thank you all for your support, whether it be in your interactions on social media or your dollars in the store. It's a huge help, and I appreciate you more than your elected officials ever will. And I realize that's not saying much, but you know what I'm getting at. Last episode, I did mention that pre orders for shirts would be going live this week. However, the original company I was going to use for the production jacked up their prices, so I'm now searching for another company that can produce the design at the price and the quality that I want. So, apologies for the delay. In the meantime, though, stock up on your Industrial Society and its future QR code slaps. They are now live in the shop and they're going to look great on whatever private property you put them on. But for those who look forward to the Stoic quote each episode, this week's quote is actually extremely relevant to the topic at hand. I don't typically aim to find a quote that matches best with the topics I am discussing, but it just so happens that I found this quote right after I decided what I wanted to talk about this week. And so, in this shorter episode, I want to talk about what empowerment is and what we think it is today. And I think it helps to frame this topic by starting with the latter so that I can conclude on a more constructive note. And take any of the four pillars of this show and apply them to this entire topic. But today, just like many other things in our lives, people's understanding of what empowerment is sadly misconstrued. Just like how our perception of gender, sex, purpose, health, and danger is distorted today, what we perceive to be empowering is also sadly warped. And I won't make this entire episode about Uncle Ted since that's what I did last week, but like he proposed in his manifesto today, people derive power from identifying with large groups or with ideologies. Activists focusing on race, climate, gender, etc., whatever it is, show how little we actually understand about empowerment. Incels, as well as their female counterparts, femcells, yes, that is a real thing, are comical yet easy to use examples of this. Both groups believe that by refusing to sleep with the other sex while also vehemently hating them grants them empowerment. Another example are people who rely on horoscopes or psychics to guide them through their days. Whatever some app or some snake oil salesman sells them, that's a tongue twister, is accepted as universal truth, empowering them to go about their day on the tracks laid by inconsistent and vague sources designed to prey upon their confirmation bias. And finally, those who are overweight and refuse to adopt healthy habits latch on to the big is beautiful narrative that is being pushed as it conveniently provides them with a level of empowerment simply by quite literally doing nothing. And that is exactly what all of these groups have in common. All of their ideologies encourage those following them to not do something. Incels and femcells, for example, do not engage with the opposite sex. The biggest beautiful crowd, as we just went over, do not work out or eat healthy. Horoscope girls, do not take about accountability, for your own actions or outcomes in your life. It's the stars or the universe that are to blame. And after determining whether an ideology supports the God given or natural rights that we as humans all possess, one should then confirm if it is simply held up by feel good statements or if it actually requires positive action. Of course, there are more subjective qualifiers that go into whether subscribing to a particular school of thought is right for somebody, but generally, those two are the barriers to entry for a good stance to take that will withstand the test of time. And to provide one more example to really drive this point home while also maximizing the amount of people I can piss off, those who rush to throw whatever religious book at others while not practicing what they preach or by picking and choosing what applies to their lives join the ranks among the other groups I have used as examples here. The religion itself may align with our natural rights while also promoting positive action. However, what the individual in this example subscribes to is different from the religion, as they likely only acknowledge whatever parts are convenient to them, likely leaving out the things that call them to actually do good. This does not mean to interpret those who might be considered Bible thumpers as frauds, but rather let their actions speak and be aware of whether they align with their words. And we as humans are all hypocritical to varying degrees. For example, we may overindulge in junk food or skip a couple of days at the gym, but do we acknowledge that we have strayed from the path and correct course? What I am trying to get at is that simply by identifying with a group or a doctrine, you are not empowered. It takes no effort to make the choice in your head that you identify with a certain ideology. Additionally, that decision means nothing to people outside of you and whatever group you align with, assuming they're even aware that you align with them. So, why is it that these groups go about trying to force their beliefs or lifestyles on everyone else with their heads held so high? Well, I do have a theory as to why this is, but I fear as though it'll distract from what is important and what I really want to get across here. So I'm going to put that aside for now and maybe we'll revisit it in another episode. In the episode where I discussed what it means to be a man, I explained that knocking up your girlfriend or wife does not make you a father. In order to be granted the title of father, you have to put in the work. You must commit to raising your child and supporting and protecting your family virtuously. And I use the word virtuously on purpose for reasons I will reveal a little bit later as I conclude this topic, but empowerment can only go as far or be as strong as the individual who recognizes it within them. And while that may sound subjective, the strength being recognized is measured objectively in the context of what people have recognized as strength throughout all of history. And history will show that strength must be employed physically and mentally in order for a nation to withstand the test of time. No nation that lasted long was simply based on sheer force or higher thought alone. It is a marriage of these two that created the greatest of empires, i.e., Greece, Rome, the US, etc. And we can all think of a time when we have observed someone, likely in the groups I used as examples earlier, attempting to exact their will on others, or when it is obvious they are extremely prideful of their perceived superiority and thinking, yeah, they certainly have passion, but they're not the smartest, or I wouldn't be running my mouth like that if I didn't have the means to back it up. Absolute empowerment is recognized by others only as much as it is by the individual wielding it, as I said earlier. However, its genesis, true empowerment, takes place within the individual, not from the outsiders. It is only by constantly working the mind and the body virtuously that one can feel empowered. And there it is again, that word, virtuously. And continue to bear with me here as I will share why it is so important in the discussion shortly here. But true empowerment is not to be put to use against others or in an outward expression. It is for the individual to wield in his everyday life. By strengthening his mind so that he is equipped properly to view the world around him, and by exposing his body to stress such as hard labor or physical exercise, a man is empowered to handle anything that life will throw at him. He will possess the mental and physical tools necessary to navigate whatever roadblocks he will encounter. And just like everything in life, there are no shortcuts. There are no shortcuts in achieving this, achieving the rank of father, whatever it is. Pain, time, stress, etc., will all go into the endeavor of feeling truly empowered. Without paying the price of enduring all of that, you have not earned the right to true empowerment. And if deep down inside you do not recognize that there are flaws in your beliefs, even as you continuously find yourself incapable of dealing with hardship, others will have no problem identifying where you failed to measure up. The phrase embrace the suck is very relevant, actually, as we look at what it is and what isn't empowering. The price must be paid and the process followed. This is why I have conditioned myself to welcome difficult tasks that present themselves to me. An example of this is when I was in high school and really began working out seriously outside of the sports I played. I made the exercises I hated most, which were planks and core exercises in general, my absolute favorite. I did this by forcing myself to do them every single day I went to the gym, and more than the average person would on days when core wasn't the focus. So my go-to exercise was like the 5-minute plank. It was like 1 minute, full plank, fully extended, 30 seconds half plank, 30 seconds half plank, one leg up, the 30 seconds half plank, other leg up, then 30 seconds, one arm on one side plank, another 30 seconds, and then 30 seconds full plank, back up on your hands fully extended, and then a minute half plank back on your forearms. I did that twice with leg lifts, about 2 minutes of leg lifts in between. And after a while, I would be excited to sort of take on the challenge and the pain of these exercises, knowing that I would not only be walking away with a stronger core and maybe abs too, kind of the goal, but with the ability to do such unbearable exercises better than most. This is also why I look forward to uncomfortable conversations or scenarios, as they will help condition my mind to enable me to handle these situations better down the road. This is what empowerment truly is. It is not walking around bitching and moaning about a certain politically charged topic thinking you have might because others are doing the same thing as you. Empowerment is thinking and acting accordingly in the face of these topics and people because you are properly equipped to do so from the challenges you have overcome. Willingly exposing yourself to stress is not an easy endeavor, but one thing to help push you to give it a try, on top of, it just being the path to empowerment, is that it is also aligned with finding purpose in life. And here is where the whole virtue word comes into play. The Stoics held that to live virtuously was one's purpose in life. And it was Seneca that provided the Stoic definition of virtue as nothing else other than right reason. Seneca also said the mind of the wise man is like the heavens beyond the moon. The sky up there is always clear. This joy is produced only by the consciousness of the virtues. The thoughts and actions you subscribe to should be in line with right reason, aka virtue, and not simply for the purpose of empowerment or joy, but because it is what we are called to do as human beings. It just so happens that in the pursuit of our purpose, we reap the great rewards of feeling true empowerment as well as joy. And I'll conclude this episode with the following quote offered by Marcus Aurelius, another Stoic, obviously, one of the more famous ones, in which he bolsters this stance. But you too cultivate virtue, he replies, only because you hope to gain some pleasure from it. First of all, even though virtue will assure pleasure, it is not on account of pleasure that virtue is pursued. It is not pleasure that it assures, but pleasure as well. Nor does virtue exert itself for pleasure, but its effort. Though it aims at something else, achieves this too. Thus, pleasure is not the reward or cause of virtue, but the byproduct of it. And like I said at the beginning of this episode, this is going to be a bit of a shorter topic here, but thank you for tuning in to hear me ramble on about true empowerment here. I'm cutting this one early as I have a little bit of prep to do for the next episode, which I'm going to start filming shortly here. It's going to be in a little different format than what we're accustomed to, me just monologuing into the camera. I'm very excited. Some really, really fun, interesting topics this next one. I don't want to spoil it, but just know it's going to be an interesting one. So please tune in next week. But as you go forth this week, though, beware the frailty of man, particularly those with a false sense of empowerment. Do not fall victim to the same traps they fell for in deriving where their feelings for empowerment come from. Instead, focus on living a virtuous life, a life of right reason, and do not shy away from things that suck. Embrace them as the price to be paid for true empowerment. Stay metal. Thank you.